Everyone wants to know, where's all this going? What does the next 6 months, 12 months look like? Before I talk to candidates, I actually always think hard about this. But the reality is, I actually don't know. I want to hire people and I want to work with people that can help me and help all of us figure that out.
Hi, it's Niki from Conviction, and today we're in the good company of Zach Ziegler, the co-founder of OpenEvidence. Zach comes from an academic background where he got his PhD from Harvard and was deep in LM research way before it was ever cool. While in the mathematical theories of it all, he wondered to himself, how can we apply this to the real world and see meaningful change? And now he's doing just that at OpenEvidence in the healthcare space. Zach is obviously brilliant and great at building AI, but he's equally obsessed with building great teams. And honestly, he's cracked at both. So let's get into it. Zach, I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Really excited to be here.
You all have done some really amazing things at OpenEvidence. I believe 40% of US doctors are on the platform. And there's tens of thousands of hospitals and medical centers using the platform daily. And you did it all with just 35 people, which is insane leverage. Was it an intentional choice to stay that lean, or was it just how the hiring philosophy played out?
Yeah. So it was definitely an intentional choice. I would say it's the result of a very intentional hiring philosophy playing out in a lot of ways. Our core thesis is that companies live or die existentially on the basis of doing a relatively small number of things really, really, really well. And it's very easy to kind of get caught up in there being a whole lot of things that kind of have to happen or really feel like they have to happen. And a failure mode that I see is you see that and you're like, oh my God, and then you hire a ton of people really quickly because you want to go do all those things. I think that leads to this kind of like big, doubly inefficient system where you're both doing stuff that doesn't really matter. And then for the small kind of really core things that really, really do matter, there are all these people all of a sudden that are in the way. And it's this very literal game of kind of telephone that gets in the way of really just like sitting down and having your best people just individually do that really core piece really, really well. And so what we find is that if you give individuals like end-to-end ownership of outcomes, and you can get away from putting all of this structure in place, then you can do really, really amazing things and things that feel very magical with a very small team.
Yeah.
And of course, that relies on those individuals being very special people.
Yeah.
And so kind of because of a desire to very intentionally structure the process that we have around this kind of individual end-to-end ownership, that really leads us to being extremely selective of the people that we hire. And really focused on, being, very patient and finding the people that are exceptionally brilliant, that are really energized and motivated, kind of manage themselves and are just really excited about building really important things.
Yeah. I mean, I've come to know about you that you're great at finding exceptional people, and it's not an easy feat. So how do you do it? How do you find these people and then before anyone else, and then tell us about the impacts that those people tend to have. Like you've kind of shared a little bit about that.
We've gone through a number of different hiring processes throughout the years we've been working on this. And what I found is that it's actually super, super simple. It really comes down to two things when I'm looking at candidates. One is this one of the smartest people that I've ever met? And then the other is, would I just personally really like to work with this person? You only have a very small amount of data, actually, compared to working with someone. Whatever kind of like little things you find or experience, it's tempting to be, oh my God, like we need to do this. We need to hire, like maybe this person is like a little bit of a weird thing, but like I'm sure that won't matter. I'm sure it'll be great. 100% of the time, that actually matters a lot, right? And so I've realized that as long as someone's really smart and I just actually really like engaging with them, everything else kind of really works out. Any specific skill set, any specific positions are just not nearly as important as is this person just really smart and do I like them? Everything we do really comes down to, can we give doctors gifts? Can we because of the way that our business is structured, we're incentivized to just say, what are things that are useful for doctors? Can we just make that and give that to them and make those really excellent? The example from earlier this month, or I guess last month, December, was the dialer. This is a feature where when doctors need to call patients to give lab values or something, often they don't want to use their personal number because you don't want your personal number being wildly out there.
Yep.
And then also you want to assign that to your hospital number so that when patients call back, they will reach like a nurse line that can triage calls appropriately and stuff like that. So just in the way that we do everything, we put our heads together figuring out what should this look like? What does this experience look like for user? From a true user level and product level, what is this thing? And then one of our engineers who I love is Ethan, and he's just like, okay, I'll do this. And so then came back a week later with just the full thing completed and a PR ready to go that was that looked good, that was really thoughtful on what the product was worked really well, was thoughtful for all sorts of use case for edge cases and that sort of stuff. And that's the way that I love to work, which is like at an individual by individual level, align brain meld on what's important, and then trust folks and be able to hire folks you can trust to make those things a reality.
Yeah, I think it's such a good point, because I think oftentimes when I talk to founders, they often get caught up on the traditional signals at looking at how someone's great, and kind of gloss over the soft skills or the entrepreneurial spirit, like things like that. And so it probably took you some cycles to figure out, like, okay, what balance do I want in someone? How do I assess this? But what was that point where it clicked for you of like, okay, yes, this is how I'm going to assess this, or this is how I can get the best signal for myself on this?
I love hiring people that either want to be founders someday or could themselves be founders. There's like this pretty meaningful difference between someone who is like an employee and someone who really wants to push and really views work not as something that they show up to, that they clock in and then they make some money for somebody else. I want to work with people that are really motivated, that love what they do and are excited about building because, they want to move the needle in the world, right? I think what's really cool about where OpenEvidence is at right now, and this is all evolved with our trajectory as a company, is that we have basically a platform that, from an engineering point of view and a technical point of view, is this fantastic place where, if you can come in and have good ideas and do a really good job building stuff, when you merge your thing into master and it gets deployed to prod, there's going to be hundreds of thousands or millions of people around the world that are going to be impacted by that change. And so it's really well suited for people that want to push, people that want to say, I'm going to personally move the needle with my two hands and change how healthcare is practiced and the care that patients are able to receive.
Yeah.
I know for myself, like, I'm a leader here, but I'm also an IC, right? And I code. And what I love and what motivates me when I code is I want to be able to get up in front of this team we've assembled and prove that my work's important. I want to get up and show a graph that's like, we started here, I thought really hard and I did a lot of really good work, and now we're here and our usage is here and the quality is here, or whatever it is. And I want to plant my flag and prove that. And I just love hiring people that feel that same way and want to themselves, be able to prove that they're awesome and doing really great work.
I mean, iron sharpens iron. So I think people always want to work with other smart people or people that inspire them. So that makes a lot of sense. I think you all have taken an unconventional approach to your jobs page in this way, in some regard. And so you've listed all of the great people that are currently on your team, but you have no posted jobs. You just have your team listed on there and a simple ask to email the why they should work at OpenEvidence. What was the thought process behind that approach, or why take that approach, and what were the pros and cons of that? Yeah,
so our hiring process has really focused on optimizing for finding the individual and people who have kind of the right attitude and excitement, more so than any skill set. And so for where we're at right now, right, we have about 50% of doctors in the country on the platform. The average user uses us 30 times a month. We're very public about our usage numbers and that sort of stuff. The kind of why of it and the impact, I think, is generally very clear. And so, I don't think we need to do a huge amount of work kind of publicizing, all of that stuff. And so then the piece that remains is, what do you want to contribute, and why are you the right person to contribute that sort of thing. For us, kind of any specific of the traditional like roles are very much secondary, whether that's a front-end engineer or a back-end engineer or a machine learning engineer. We are interested in finding people that want to build things, that want to build products, that care about the end user experience. And so actually it's pretty intentional, right? Because that building stuff, I think, is a little bit different than being someone that, does a few tasks here or there, like does a very specific type of task. So we don't even list out the tasks really, because it's just not how we think about things so much. And then, so yeah, we get really great replies from folks who see that and are just like at a high level, at a product level, at a user level, this is why I want to be a part of this group.
I mean, is there a point at which it doesn't scale? Or are there any cons to like all of the top of funnel that you're getting? Is it easy to sift through all of that?
I mean, I think hiring is always pretty hard and like takes a lot of energy to find the right people. It's definitely challenging, but I think it's the right way to do things. And I guess it's really more like it depends on the organization you're trying to create. I think for the very hierarchy-less, very flat, very autonomous structure that we're trying to create, it's actually very helpful to filter even from the very beginning, even from the top of funnel, for the people that are going to excel in that kind of structure. Rather than people that want to be part of a very standard, normal 9-to-5 type situation. And so if we start at the top of funnel by doing things differently, I think we already kind of get gains on that process.
Are you the one going through all this top of funnel, or is it like a team effort?
It's absolutely a team effort, but the truth is it's a senior most people.
Okay.
Myself, Daniel, many of the other senior folks as well. We all think hiring is one of the more important parts of our job, and so yeah, it's we are looking at all of those emails. Yeah.
Well, it's music to my ears as someone who sees the value of recruiting. I think founders should always spend a lot of time and always prioritize recruiting, because the team that you build is the value that you have. You all have done a really great job of hiring in a really competitive market. I mean, it is insane out there. What do you feel like you've done differently to be competitive and get great people to say yes to OpenEvidence?
My experience is that people actually, I think, kind of know what they're looking for. And so there's plenty of people and I'll say we're very kind of, we strive to be extremely upfront about what our culture is, what we're looking for, and how we want to work with the people that we all work with. And so the reality is that there are a lot of people that actually just would not at all be interested in that style of working. And from my point of view, that's actually totally fine, right? We have one structure. There are plenty of other structures, right? I think we're very fortunate to be at this very specific time, we being almost any form of software engineering, where there are great opportunities in big tech, at tons of companies, at startups, where you can have a really fantastic life, make a lot of money, have a pleasurable living experience by just doing a very standard thing, showing up to work, working 9 to 5, working a few hours, doing some stuff, and going home. And so I think that's great. And for folks that want to do that, take that opportunity, do that sort of thing. It's not going to be what working at OpenEvidence is like. And so we're very kind of upfront about that. And I think that is important for two things. First, it filters out folks that are not interested, and we learn that very on. We don't waste a lot of our energy or their time kind of with that situation. But then the people that are, more, the most ambitious, founder-esque, really, really smart, want to themselves be that person that is making the difference, really respond positively to that. And so I think being very clear about that creates this bifurcation, which leads to this defining, situation for OpenEvidence, right? And so the pitch that I give candidates, which I think resonates with exactly that type of person, is, we're a $6 billion company that's made up of 25, 30 engineers or so, right? Mm-hmm. It's one of the highest valuation per employee companies in the world right now. And that is not just a number, that reflects a reality that the people that we bring in are individually having a huge impact on the outcome of the company, on the experience of doctors in the healthcare system, and ultimately on patients in the world. And so, while it's not everyone that wants to live that way. If you're the type of person that specific thing is exactly what you're looking for, I think it's a very easy thing to say yes to.
Yeah, I mean, that's so meaningful, right? When you're joining an early team, the two things that you really should want to optimize for is impact and the quality of the people that you're working with. So you're really building your process to highlight those two things and in some ways filter for those two things, right? So there's really strong alignment. In terms of learnings, I'm sure there's also been learnings through some of this process. What has been your biggest learning building OpenEvidence so far?
Yeah. Well, from a hiring perspective, my biggest learning is to really trust your gut. That I early on we tried to put a lot of structure around the hiring process, and what I found more recently is that it's really important to meet people in person and to kind of engage with them face to face and just have a really real conversation. And it's just like, is this someone that I would like to personally work with, right? And I think it's easy to be like, oh, well, maybe I wouldn't love working with this person, but like maybe there's like some place in the org where they could just sit or whatever. And I think that's a huge mistake because ultimately they're going to be responsible for you, to you ultimately. And you're going to end up engaging with them. And so, what I've been doing, especially in the last year or 2 years, is really just build an organization of people that I just would love to spend time with, hang out with, because that's, I spend most of my time with these people.
Yeah, you probably spend more time with them than you do your own family some days.
For sure, yeah, for sure.
So you've been really intentional about building this team. What do you think makes or breaks the cultural DNA of an early team?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, especially for really early companies, is being really honest with yourself about like what the core thing that you're trying to basically like prove as a hypothesis, and then stripping everything else away and just focusing on that one very core thing. And then as an extension of that, pivoting quickly based on the results, right? I think that it's obviously well known that the likelihood of starting any startup and then having it be successful to some definition of successful or exit is, vanishingly small, right? And I think that the way to increase that or to kind of maximize the chance that you end up in the, rare, very successful case is to essentially fail fast, to try stuff, figure out, what is that core thing, and then be willing to, have very little anchoring bias and said, we were doing this yesterday, but if we're just really, super honest with ourselves, like this is not it, this doesn't feel realistic, let's switch to this other thing that we're excited about or learning about. We did that early on a ton. We've gone through like 6 names or 7 names as a company. I won't even go through what they all are and different things that our focus has been until we landed at OpenEvidence. And then I think very early on at OpenEvidence, when we started working on this piece that we have now, it was really within the first like 2 or 3 months that we made contact with reality quickly, put some very, very, very bad version of OpenEvidence out into the world, got feedback, and I think heard enough to know that there's a ton that we can do better and that like we can improve on, but also that there's like kind of core excitement about what the end state opportunity of this could look like. And so that was very motivating to hear and gave us a lot of confidence to continue iterating really quickly. But to know that there was a there with this, that if we worked super, super hard on and pushed hard on, we'd be able to kind of make something really special.
Yeah, I think that's such an insightful learning. I think as founders, you have to fail and learn quickly. And oftentimes founders think about that from a product or a company building perspective, but not necessarily more granularly from like a talent perspective and how you assess candidates, the types of people that you're talking to and things like that. But it seems like you guys did that. I'm sure there were also some tough losses that you guys went through that helped you learn from that. I know it can be hard to take those losses, but those are also really meaningful learning opportunities. Is there like a time that you can remember that early on that really helped shape you guys?
I don't know how ultimately impactful this has been, but we had most of our engineering team originally in Cambridge, and that was where we largely kind of started out as a company, with some amount of remote as well. And there's one candidate in particular that I remember that we vibed super well with. She was excited about us, But ultimately, the draw of the Bay Area was too much, and there's the idea of kind of being in the San Francisco situation was kind of the piece for her ultimately. And so, it wasn't purely on the basis of that, but this has become such a special place where there's such a high density of talent, and so we've established an office here and established a real presence, and that's been one of the really exciting pieces for us as a company in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, and you're hiring more in this office, so that'll be exciting to grow and see. What's the hardest question you get from candidates?
Everyone wants to know, where's all this going, right? What is the next 6 months, 12 months look like? And before I talk to candidates, I actually always think hard about this. It actually is always a forcing function to reconsider how I feel. And in a lot of ways, what we end up talking about is, kind of my subconscious that comes through, I think, to whatever the answer is at a given time. But the reality is, I actually don't know. and I think, sometimes candidates want to have some sense. And obviously, I have a sense of stuff that right now I'm really excited about. But the reality is that I want to hire people and I want to work with people that can help me and help all of us figure that out. And so it's hard because I sometimes feel like I should know the exact answer. But I think while I have a general sense of where I want this to go, stuff evolves really quickly. We're very responsive to the evolving world. And we try to, think about, what is the most important thing I can do at any one point. And next week, that might change. And the week after that, that might change as well. It's a question that kind of forces me to always be reconsidering kind of what that thing is.
I think with technical folks, especially, like, how do you manage to get them to dream with you, but also root them in the reality of like, hey, like, I don't really know, but here's what I think.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
It's definitely a tricky balance. And the way to do it, this true specific way to do it, is to have a really clear North Star. To have a sense of like, to always be able to remember, like, this is what we're trying to accomplish, like fundamentally. And I find that sometimes we start conversations and like 5-10 minutes in, it's like, wait a minute, I don't think we even all agree on what even we're trying to do here, right? And if we can even just articulate and like write down in a Google Doc, I make tons of Google Docs. Everyone makes fun of me for it because my project management is literally Google Docs, right? And it's like, hold on. Let me share a screen and let's just write down together and agree on, like, what are we trying to do? What is the actual goal? What does the user see at the end that we think is the right experience or the right end state? And if you can agree on that, then the next step of a conversation of just figuring out, okay, well, how do we get there is a non-trivial conversation, but it's something that is really well done in groups, I think, and really benefits from everybody having, opinions and ideas and thoughts. I always come out of those conversations feeling like, this is something where the collective, the combination is substantially bigger than the sum of its parts. And then the execution piece is actually just comes down to, okay, now we can go break and go away for a week and just execute on these parts and come back together.
Yeah.
And so that's how we've found we can kind of go in not knowing all the answers, but aligning 100% on what even the end state for the user looks like.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the beauty of smaller and leaner teams is that you have trust in everyone to be able to deliver what they need to do, but also you can create alignment quickly and be able to drive outcomes faster.
Yeah, 100%.
And so it seems like you guys have done that beautifully. Okay, Zach, well, the real juicy question is, tell us your most unhinged recruiting story.
Yeah. So in the early days of this company, it was like mid to late pandemic. Things were generally very remote. And so the way that we kind of naturally started to operate is very much through hackathons. Daniel had sold Kensho for $700 million a few years before. And he was self-funding the company. And so we did stuff that you probably couldn't do as a young, early VC-backed company, which is that we would be kind of separated and then we would come together at hackathons. And so we would get a really nice big house, often in LA or even somewhere international. And this is when we were a team of like 3 to 4 to 5 people. And it'd be like a hacker house, and we would just stay in the house for a week. We'd all travel there, and we'd start off the week by figuring out what do we want to accomplish, what do we want to walk away at the end of the week being launched, basically, and do that. And we would kind of use those periods as recruiting periods. So people that we were kind of like midway through conversations with, we would just invite, and we just completely throw people into the deep end in terms of come, like with very, we will tell you very little. We will give you an address. We will book your flight, and we'll say, be at this address at this time. Yeah. No more information. No more sense of what to expect. And then, some of our early people that have turned into the senior leadership of this company just came and said, "Okay, I'm here. What are we doing? Let's do it."
Yeah.
And I think that was, somewhat unhinged or unstandard or non-standard, but it led to a very kind of specific type of culture and a specific type of person, which is the person that is willing and excited to, sight unseen, with very little information, drop everything, fly across the country or to, even into a different country, to be with people that they haven't spent that much time with, to say, what are we doing here, right? Yep. And that actually, I think, selects ultimately for a type of person that that wants to push the boundaries, that doesn't believe that the rules are, a certain way and everything has to be done by those rules. And I think that was really important for establishing the kind of early group and an early culture.
What a cool way to sort out someone who can deal with ambiguity and all of the things of working in an early stage company where you have no idea what's happening day to day, but you have to come and figure it out. That's really cool.
You map the ambiguity, the day-to-day experience onto the broader kind of cultural piece of expectations, and see if someone's up for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Zach, for spending the time with us today. It was so great to have you. It's been so great partnering with you, and really excited to see all the great things that you all keep doing at OpenEvidence.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.